everybody. Welcome to Small Business Saturday here on Furthermore with Amanda Head. I am so delighted that you have joined me. And I don't know about you, but I am loving this Small Business Saturday series because I am learning about wonderful little companies, sometimes little, sometimes medium-sized companies across this country. And I think that it's amazing to know about these companies so that we can support them, especially if you live in the area. And my guest today, this is a little bit out of my comfort and knowledge zone, as you'll probably learn in this interview, because I sound a little bit like a neophyte in discussing the oil and gas industry. I try to be as knowledgeable of it as I can because it is such an important part of our economy. And unfortunately, Joe Biden has made it a negative point, a devastating point of our economy. Energy security is national security. We talk about this on the show all the time. And because Joe Biden has decided to strip away the good policies of Donald Trump with respect to energy and basically export anything we are doing to within day one, ending the XL pipeline and pausing leases in places like Texas and Alaska and North Dakota and places in this country that have done a really bang up job of producing oil so that America can, as we were for the first time under Donald Trump, be not only energy independent, but a net exporter of energy. Well, all that has gone, but there are still some really sunny spots in the oil industry, and we're going to talk about those in just a few moments with Jay Burr, who is the president of Panex. It is a smaller oil company based out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. A lot of people don't realize this because you hear far leftists talking about big oil greed, and they think that it's all of the, Chevron and Exxon and all of these huge oil companies that are connected to OPEC and blah, 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 blah. 85 to 90% of oil companies in the United States have 12 or fewer employees. So it's important to talk about that aspect of it because these folks get demonized with the rest of them. And so I'm looking really forward to digging into this issue with Jay Burr. Again, he's the president of Panex, and we're going to be back with him in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. I am here with Jay Burr. He is the president and CEO of Panex. You all know I love highlighting these small businesses across America. And when you think of an oil or a gas company, you wouldn't necessarily think of small businesses, but many of you would probably be surprised to know that 95% of our energy production in this country comes from companies like his with 12 or so employees or fewer. So I am so excited to have you here, Jay, and talk about your business. I know it's family. It's been in the family, and I want to hear all about it. So give us kind of a little synopsis of Panex.
Well, Amanda, it's great being here. We're a family-run business. That's what we've done. I was one of the fortunate ones in life that some people spend years looking for their purpose. I knew mine at 7 years old. My dad took me to the field in Luling, Texas, and get out there, and I saw the army of pump jacks, and I was hooked. I knew what I wanted to do. Now, what I didn't know is that I was getting in the family business. Now my boys have started in the business, and we actually say we have 4 generations that this is all my family's ever done. Wow. And I was given a talk to a group of folks here a couple of weeks ago, and I did something different that I hadn't done before. And I kind of looked down and said, hey, raise your hand if you have been or if you've ever looked at doing anything in the oil and gas business. And you had a couple of people raise their hand. And I said, what you guys don't realize is that everybody in this room should have their hand raised. Yeah. We're all in the oil and gas business, whether you want to be or not. We all pay for it. Yeah. And so I just happen to be in one of the industries that was designed to specifically reverse that flow of revenue.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. So Bob, was Robert your dad?
Yes.
Okay, and he started it in 1973. Is that right?
He got in the oil business. It was 1973. He was in the insurance business at that point in time. Him and my mom married at 16 years old. I have 3 older sisters. They had their first kid at 16 years old. They're one of those, one of the throwback stories. And my dad was always a ball player, and he had to figure out a way to keep score. And when he stopped playing ball, he was kind of lost. He'll tell you that he was one of the worst manual labor workers of all time. And so he found the insurance business and found sales. And he figured out, okay, doesn't matter what your batting average is. If that guy hits 500 and I hit 250, all I have to do is work twice as hard as him and make the numbers work for me.
Yeah.
And that's when he got into sales. He was in his early 20s. And when he was 27 years old, my Uncle Gene called him and said, Bob, I think I got something that you'll like. And he said, come on up. I wasn't even born yet. That was 2 years before I was born. And so Dad went up to Dallas to see Uncle Gene. He sat in the office, listened to them all presenting an oil deal for a couple hours. He said, oh, I think I can do that. He grabbed a sheet of leads and started making calls and made a sale. And that afternoon, he called my mom and said, put the house for sale. I got something we're doing. And that was when he jumped into oil. And
Wow.
we've been doing it ever since.
That is so cool. I imagine that the landscape for, I mean, we have Tim Stewart on our TV show a lot. He's the president of U.S. Oil and Gas Association, and we unfortunately have him on usually because there is something that the Biden administration is doing to suppress the oil and gas industry, and that's almost always the case. It's hardly ever that we have him on for a victory lap. But I imagine the landscape for energy producers like Panex in 2024 is very different than it was in 1973. Can you talk to us about some of the changes that have happened in the industry and how you guys have been forced to evolve?
Well, it breaks my heart, but because put it into context. When you look at American history, when you look at what had to happen for us to become a country, it's probably one of the top two stories ever told.
Yeah.
I mean, the odds of that many brilliant people being together at that point in time. And I'm not saying we're perfect. I know, Lord knows you can have the arguments, but you got a COA. But the fact of the matter is, if you took that story to Hollywood, people wouldn't believe it. No, that's unrealistic. I mean, from the night washing across the whole deal. Well, we have been told so many things about that group of men that were wrong that we've bastardized the story of America. We don't know our true history. Well, the reason I say it like that is when you relate it to oil and gas, oil has provided more upward mobility, has brought more from poverty, and has improved the human condition more than any resource we have ever used. Yet for half of that time, you've had a small and then a growing segment of the population that wants us to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it's been demonized for almost 70 years now. And you kind of scratch your head and you go, well, here you have something that has done good. Now, once again, about like the story of America, have there been issues? Oh, yeah, there have been issues. But when you look at, let's take climate, let's say you believe in climate change, and let's say you want to lower emissions. Do you know where 2/3 of the emissions that have been lowered came from over the last handful of years? From oil and gas companies learning how to burn their product cleaner.
Right.
The
Yeah.
innovations that we've come up with.
Yeah.
And so it's you look at it, and that's where it breaks your heart, is because this is something that is intricate. I mean, it is vital to every person's life, yet we know nothing about it. And I was at CPAC earlier this year, and I was talking I got off stage and walked back, and I was talking to Nigel Farage, and that's exactly what we were talking about. I was just saying it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I said, if you look at what we're doing, it doesn't make sense. And he said something to me that was profound, but it was short. And I sat there, and it kind of stumped me when he said it. He said, look, you cannot control abundance. You can control scarcity.
Oh,
And if that doesn't kind of rattle your
yikes, that's
cage,
scary.
then, because when you look at it and you line all the rationales for doing what they're doing up, and none of it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't matter what way you look at it, it doesn't make sense. There's only one way that it does make sense. If you wanted to destroy us, what would you do? And that's the only lens that all the dots line up.
Yeah.
Well, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and swims like a duck, Occam's razor says it's a duck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the easiest conclusion. Has there been, because I often talk on air about green energy policies and the fact that they just, I mean, there seems to be a central theme of them, which is cart before the horse. with respect to oil production, the Biden administration would rather purchase dirty oil from Venezuela and Russia than to invest and care for American energy producers. With respect to the EVs, I mean, obviously, we don't have the grid infrastructure in any state. Here in California, as well as other states across the West, you have rolling blackouts and brownouts. The infrastructure just isn't there, and they are consistently pushing these policies before America is prepared to support the weight of those policies. Have you seen anything in the green energy sector that has actually been good for energy production?
I mean, I'm sure there's something. I mean, but the fact of the matter is, if there was something overriding, you would hear about it every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
They haven't been known to be quiet. And so if somebody, the human condition says that if somebody created the greatest invention since sliced bread and it solved the world's energy problems, they'd tell somebody about it.
Yeah.
That's not something that's going to stay quiet. And so when I look at the green movement and all that, I mean, I welcome it all. A country can measure its affluence by how much energy each citizen consumes. And so I want everybody to have as much energy as they want to have, as cheap as they can have it.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I am against green energy. If you show me an electric vehicle that can do what my Dodge does, I'll flip into it. Yeah. Now, if you put a gun to my head and make me, I'm going to be angry the whole way through.
Yep.
And so it's one that I'd prefer to let the free market decide, because like we were talking a minute ago, there's so many things that just don't make sense that, you hate to be Simple Simon, but follow the money.
Yeah.
We try to be the sharpest knife in the drawer and come up with the greatest rationales for everything happening, when in truth, it's probably an old saying. Look, just follow the money and it'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a few years ago, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, North Face, the outdoor outfitters, they were on a green energy crusade, and they put out I think it was on Instagram, some ad or something on social media about being green energy conscious, and basically castigating American energy producers and oil producers. And some witty person pointed out in the comments that I think it was like 96% of the products that North Face produces are petroleum products.
Yeah.
But the problem is, Jay, is that you have all of these young idiot protesters out there acting like we can just literally flip a switch and make energy green. And I'm with you. If there was a perfect solution out there that didn't cost more, there wasn't some outsized impact in another area that we're either thinking about or not thinking about, if it was something that wouldn't suppress our economy or destroy our economy, if it wasn't something that caused strife between nations, that would be a perfect product. Those would be the elements of what I would consider to be a great clean energy product. But that can't happen. And with respect to what I was just saying about North Face, it seems to me that the oil industry is not going anywhere. And I hate to break it to these young idiot protesters, but I think that's the truth, isn't it?
Well, I mean, think about it. 83% of the world is just now beginning to use oil.
Yeah.
They're just now seeing the benefits of what having a petroleum-based economy will do. What do you think they're going to choose? To use more oil and make their lives better, or go, oh, Greta's telling us we're destroying their oil, let's go back to the Stone Age.
Right.
And so you as humans, we yearn to be better. We want to live in better conditions. I mean, I when I was a kid, I used to always, how do you get rich? What's the quickest way to get rich? And I think I was 10 or 11 years old when I said, well, the quickest way to get rich is find a way to make somebody's life easier and then package it and sell it. And so everybody wants to, well, sometimes you have to look at why your life is easier.
Yeah. You
can't just ignore it. When you flip that light switch, guess what? That energy comes from somewhere. It didn't just magically appear. And it's part of our education system. Look, you don't want to bash teachers. You don't, because I know a lot of them try but my daughter had a class this year, and my daughter's pretty sharp. She's in 8th grade, and her teacher had a little meltdown in the class, because they accepted this standardized, you don't do it in front of the kids. I mean, and I don't know if any of the other kids, I don't know if she did it in front of everybody or just said it to my daughter. But it was one, she's like, I don't even know why I'm here. She said they basically provide her a script of what she has to say all year long in her class. She said, and so, why do I even need to be here? And that's what we've done. We've dumbed down the education where excellence is no longer a priority. I mean, that's, and it's sad to say, because excellence is where you get breakthroughs. Yep. A dummy didn't invent the air conditioner. You had to have some decent intellect to figure that stuff out. And so for us to purposefully dumb down I guess it goes back to that. Once again, you hate to say that control, but what's easier to control? A well-informed population that know what their rights are, or a dumbed down population that can be snowed over on everything?
That's right.
We try to make it more complicated than it is, but it's not.
No, it's not. And, and now with respect to education, you have what used to be elite education institutes across this country who are no longer requiring, standardized test scores and things like that. And it makes me wonder, Jay, you talk about the invention of the air conditioner. There are entire cities in this country, in this world, that wouldn't exist without that invention, but we are dumbing down America's youngest population. And this conversation is kind of going somewhere I wasn't expecting it to. But when we used to stand on the shoulders of giants, whose shoulders are we going to stand on now?
No, that there has to be a complete change. It has to be a cultural change, because it hadn't been something that's this just didn't happen yesterday. Now, what I do see is I do see a younger generation coming through that, I look at my kids. Boy, I'd hate to compete against my kids when you're an adult, especially if you're a woke snowflake.
Yeah.
Because I'm preparing. It's one that I teach my daughters. Look, sometimes when you're in that environment, you have to do what you have to do. You have to do what you have to do, but understand you're playing a game right here.
Yeah.
This will have no bearing on your life. How do you win this game? You win it by getting out unscathed with a good grade.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you have to play, and it sucks that I have to teach my kids that.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're playing on somebody else's field, you have to play by their rules. And so understand you're playing by their rules. Don't set it in stone. Every now and then, if there's a shot to jab back. I remember my older, she'll be a senior next year. Well, she was in 7th, 8th grade, and the teacher was talking about climate change and all that. And she kind of raised her hand. She said, well, if humans are causing the temperature on Earth to rise, why is the temperature on Mars rising?
Yeah. Very good.
It's just, okay, I have no problem tweaking you. It's just, but I don't know. It just, we've let political correctness in. Honestly, I don't believe it's Republican and Democrat. I really don't believe it. I think that's kind of a construct that they've set up, because I truly believe it's traditional Americans. We have a basic set of American values that I think the vast majority of us believe in. We might vary a little on the ends, but when you have that many people that have been political corrected to death, where they're afraid to say something. I mean, that you see what some people, called racist, called homophobic, called whatever they want to call you, but they've been beaten down so much that you just don't say anything. You don't engage. Well, us not engaging is what got us to this point. Us not calling a shovel is what got us to this point.
I agree.
And like when it comes to the LGBT, when it comes to that movement, I don't care what you want to do. Go do what you want to do.
Yeah.
It has no effect on me at all. However,
until it does.
Acting like, when you start acting like I owe you something, no, hang on, I don't.
Or you start shoving that crap down my kid's throat.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain look. I wouldn't jump into your house and tell you what to do. Don't come into my house and tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And so you have it's just, you have a lot of people that have finally had enough of it. Yeah. And I guess all of this had to happen. I mean, I really do, because you have a lot of people that are now saying stuff that would have never have dreamt to said something 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Just because it's gotten so ridiculous. I mean, it's you can't make some of the stuff up.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're right. I guess it had to get this bad for things to get better. I hope this is as bad as it gets before things get better. But then again, we've got 4 or 5 months before the election. So we just got to hang on for dear life a little bit longer. Hopefully we can see some change happening in November. Okay. I want to get back down to business, because I think Panex is a very special company, and I want to dig in a little bit more on the investment model and just the company structure. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments, but we're going to take a very quick break and we'll be right back.
In mid-2018, the doors for business opened at Panex. On day number 1, we knew that we had a distinct advantage when starting our second life in oil than we did when starting our first. Having divided the business into 2 parts, my brother and I had already spent more than 20 years mastering our craft, making sure that each side of the business was covered. With my dad in an oversight role, we knew collectively there wouldn't be much that could happen that we hadn't seen before. While we weren't sure of the exact path we would take to reach the top of the mountain, we were extremely confident that if we utilized all of our skills, were diligent in every decision we made, and worked harder than anyone else, the path would emerge. At the end of 2019, that path didn't just emerge, it came to us with flashing lights. We had been tracking market conditions and were convinced that there would be a market correction, along with a few other events, that would create a buying opportunity like we had never seen before. On April 20th, 2020, those feelings were justified when the oil market crashed like never before. At that moment, most of the companies pulled in their sails, battened down their hatches, and prepared to survive the coming storm. Not us. Fortune favors the bold. And when everyone else was getting ready for the storm, we opened our sails and welcomed it. And that's when we began our acquisition push. Almost 3 years later, our moves are proving justified, as we have made more than 20 acquisitions and have secured what we believe to be reserves between 50 and 100 million barrels of oil equivalent. At $70 oil, those reserves would be worth anywhere between $3.5 and $7 billion. Being only 6 years into our second life in oil, I can say without hesitation that we are well on our way to accomplishing our goals. And we're only just beginning.
Welcome back, everybody, to this special new Saturday series. This is the second or third time around the Small Business Saturday series of Furthermore with Amanda Head. I'm here with Jay Burr of Panex. And Jay, I want to ask you about your company structure, and you're kind of different from other oil companies. Can you tell our audience about it?
Well, we call it our first and second life in oil. I spent roughly the first 20, 25 years of my career in my family's business. And our first life ended when Marathon Oil came in and purchased the family company. Now, in my first life, I guess I was more of a salesman who happened to be in oil. And in the interim years, I learned how valuable it was to educate people. I realized how much knowledge there was that wasn't being relayed. And so we started educating people on why we do what we do. Now, the main differences between my first life and my second life is really money-wise, we don't have to do it. You know, we don't have to make a decision to do whatever we can take. We don't have to do anything, or we can do whatever we want. And so we can be very methodical in what we do and weigh everything to the nth degree. Well, when you tie all of that together, we saw things going on in the industry, and you and I have discussed a while back over, we had called it converging factors, but there were certain conditions that were set up for acquisitions. And we jumped in head first and we started making acquisitions. Now, what we do that is differently is we buy fields. We go out and we secure all the property to old fields. We love salt domes because the salt domes were your original oil fields. Back in the Wild West days of oil, that was the first fields that your geologist could identify. And your old oil companies, for lack of a better term, they're about like spoiled kids. And a spoiled kid's favorite toy is its next toy. Mm-hmm. And so what they would do is they'd come in and they'd hit a well. They'd cut backflips. They made a bunch of oil. Then they'd come in over the next handful of years and they'd drill 10, 15, 20 wells directly around that one well. Yeah. Well, then all of a sudden they'd hit a well 4 or 5 miles away and they thought they'd produced all this. So they just pick up and leave. Well, over the next 80 or so years, 100 years, a company would come in, they just kind of develop all around. Well, in a lot of cases, they fully developed the salt domes. In a lot of cases, they didn't. And so I would love to say our formula is more complicated than this, but all we do is, like you said earlier, we stand on the shoulders of giants and go and get what they left behind. Yeah. Because each one of these fields, what's unique is each one of these fields has its own footprint. And when you drill these wells, you run a log on the well. And the log is basically, you finish the hole, you have an open hole, you drop a tool down, and it tells you what's in the well. Well, all of these logs, for the most part, you can get your hands on them. When we acquired the field we're in right now, it was 40,000 different data sets that we acquired that told us basically everything on this. And you go through and you look at the logs and you build a profile of what these wells should do. Okay, in our field right now, each well should have anywhere from 3 to 8 different pay sands in it. Should have anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million barrels of oil. That's what the typical successful well in this field will do. Well, then all of a sudden we'll see a log as beautiful stacked pay sands, looks all just like the rest of them. This well should have 500,000 to 1.5 million barrels of oil. But all of a sudden we look down and we see 50,000 barrels. You go, I wonder why it didn't produce. And so you keep going through the logs and all of a sudden you see another one just like that. And another one, and another one, and another one. Well, when we were done, we had several dozen of these wells that were beautiful logs with little production. So now we have to research and figure out why. And what it turned out, it was really 2 reasons. 1 was gluttony, and 2 was sand. Back when these wells were drilled, a lot of them were drilled in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Well, when you drill these wells and run a log, the data you got when you ran a log in 1940 was essentially the same data you're getting today. Only difference is our computers and printers are a little better. Yes, we get a little more data. I'm not saying we don't, but for the most part, some of the main points you look for are the same. And so you can look at this well from 1960, see that it had 5 pay sands in it, but it didn't produce. Why didn't it? Well, when they tried to produce it, 1, they turned it wide open. Think about it like this. You have a big gulp in front of you with crushed ice and Coke. You want to drink that Coke, but you don't want any ice in your mouth. Well, you don't have a top. So you have to put your lip up against it, block it with your teeth, and gently drink it to get that Coke out. Well, that's how you have to produce these wells. What these guys did was basically just open their mouth and pour it in. Yeah, they're going to get a lot of oil, but they're going to get a lot of ice too.
Right.
Well, when you open these wells up and produce a lot of oil initially, yeah, you're going to get a lot of oil, but it's going to produce sand also. And before you know it, their beautiful oil well is turned into a 5,000-foot column of cement. Well, they didn't have any way to deal with the sand. And so they just walk away. All we do is go back and drill a well right next to it. And, now I'm not going to say it works every time. I mean, you have some that you missed. But in the field we're in right now, we've drilled 11 of these wells for our partners and placed 10 of them into production. And we have another 200 that we need to drill in the field. And I mean, they're essentially copycat wells. And all we're doing is going in and really just getting what these wells show us is there.
What is it? And I just want to get into kind of like the nerdy science side of things. What is it about the freshness of the dug hole that naturally strains the sand? Or is it just not in it to begin with?
Well, all of this oil, think about it this way. It's a balloon, and that balloon is underneath the ground and it's under pressure, and there's nowhere for that air to go. There's nowhere for the air in that balloon to go. All we do is by coming down and drilling a hole, we pop a hole in that balloon, and the natural pressure will push that oil out of the ground. And so that's a, now it's a little more involved in that, but that's a basic, that's how the pressure on the ground works. Like salt domes, years ago, this was layered sand, nothing breaking it up. Salt dome forms, comes from down deep, big body of salt that pushes up through the top. Well, it takes that land and it lifts it. Well, if there was oil and water in that land, go to the gas station, look at a puddle on the ground. That rainbow sitting on top, that's oil. And so it does the same thing under the ground. Well, as long as that water and oil can move, it's going to stay mixed. But all of a sudden, this salt dome comes in and creates elevation. Well, to have a trap, you need 2 sides to trap. The first side of that trap is the salt dome. The oil and water will not go through it. The second side of that trap is the elevation, because when it elevates, the oil and water separates.
Right.
The oil sits on top and the water sits on bottom. The oil will not go back through the water. And so what you do is you drill into the top of that oil column, and the water should push the oil all out to you. And so that's, once again, that's a very simple explanation, but that's what salt domes essentially do.
That is a fascinating process. And you might have just explained it in simplest terms, but it still seems very complex to me. I want to get into the investment program for Panex, because this is something that I think is probably unique to you and your company. And I think it's probably a reflection of innovative ideas and work ethic. Tell us about it.
Well, my dad taught me a long time ago, boy, if you can't fund your own deals, you'll always be at the mercy of somebody who can. And so when I got in the business, it was what I made my first sale 3 weeks out of high school. And so my first day in the office, I sit down, my dad puts a phone on the desk and puts a phone book and hands me a script. Says, have fun. And now at that point in time, my dad wore all the hats in the business. And it didn't take us long to realize that for one man to do everything an oil and gas company needs to do, it's next to impossible for you to run at maximum efficiency. There's just too many things. And as successful as my dad was and as good as he was at it, it was still hard to do. And so the first thing we did was we split the business into two sides. The first side is the organizational and the fundraising. That's where I went. My brother, I don't think he was in the office for the first 5 years, because the second side of that is the field and geological side.
Right.
And the concept is about what I said a second ago. If you can't fund your deals, you're always at the mercy of somebody who can.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't find oil and produce it economically, once again, you're always at the mercy of somebody who can. And so what we do is we fund everything in-house. We have partners that the individual investor puts the money in. We run 506C programs. It's accredited investors only. And basically what we do, like right now, we have a 2-well partnership where, just say a partner puts in 100,000. Uncle Sam, right off the bat, is roughly going to pay for a third of it in tax benefits. I'm not a CPA. I can just give you typical rule of thumb.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you put in 100,000, you're going to roughly have 65,000 at risk. Well, then we go out and drill these wells. If these wells produce like we anticipate, and we have numbers, we have projections, and we sit down and run, on our last 4 partnerships in this field, these are all Choctaw wells, and the wells should be very similar. Those partnerships are averaging anywhere from 20 to 35% annual returns after taxes. And when it's all said and done, we're projecting out, because they've been in production now for the longest one about 3 years, the shortest one about a month and a half. And so these wells should produce for the next 20, 30 years. And in the end, it'll make the partners, it's $70 oil, we see anywhere from 3 to 8 to 1 on their money. Now, the hidden upside is these wells will produce for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you think oil prices are going to be 15 years from now?
Oh, yeah.
And so is that 3 to 8 to 1? I mean, could be more. Now, anybody who's been in oil before knows things could change. We could have something catastrophic happen on the wells and we could lose them all tomorrow. That could happen. Now, do I think it's going to happen? No. But you have to say that, because there are no guarantees. All we do is put our head down, keep our tail up, and keep plowing until corn starts growing.
Head down, tail up. I love it. So if someone in Bend, Oregon is listening to this podcast and they're like, this sounds like a great company, I want to invest, can they?
Yeah. The first thing I'd tell you to do is go to panex.us/learn. And we put that website together specifically for individuals who've never done anything in oil before. It has our Oil and Gas 101, which basically just a foundation of oil knowledge, why we do what we do, what we're looking for. Just kind of gives you an Oil and Gas 101. Oil and Gas 102 explains the tax side of it, how it's an above line deduction. I mean, it's if you owe Uncle Sam 150,000 in taxes, you put 100,000 in a drilling program, you now owe him roughly 115,000 in taxes.
Wow.
And so we make sure you understand that. If you want to talk to CPAs, we line you up with our CPAs. But the main thing is we want you to know who you're dealing with. When it comes to doing business with anyone, the first thing you have to have is that warm, fuzzy feeling about who you're doing business with. Yeah. If you don't like who you're working with, it doesn't matter what they do, you're not going to enjoy it. Yeah. And so the first thing you do, make sure we are the people you want on your team. Could you envision yourself breaking bread with me and my family? If that answer is no, I'll be the first one to tell you don't do it. Yeah. Now, once you see that we're people that, heck, you maybe should listen to what we're saying. Once you see that we know what we're doing, at that point, what can we do for you economically? There are millions of places in this world you can put your hard-earned investment dollars. Why is this one of them? Now, when it's all said and done, if you're in the right financial position, meaning you're liquid and you can do it, you see that we're the kind of people you want to do business with, and our program makes economic sense, then we'll do business. Yeah. If we have a negative on any one of those factors, we won't. And it could take any shape, form, or fashion. I want to talk to my wife. It's too risky. I want to talk to my lawyer, my CPA. It could take any shape, form, or fashion you want it. But when you boil it right down to the root, it'll be one of those 3 factors was negative. And so that's what we do. We're an open book. We show you all our programs. We answer I give my partners 2 guarantees. One, if you call me and I don't answer the phone, if I by chance am not able to answer it, I will call you before I go to bed that night. And two, if you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I'll find it for you.
Hmm.
Other than that, all I can do is do the best I can to make you as much money as I possibly can.
I mean, for somebody looking to invest, I don't know how you could get warmer, fuzzier feelings than that. I think that it is a really, really special infrastructure that you have built. And, I agree with you. If it's not people who you want to work with, who you want to be around, who you want to sit down at the dinner table with, what's the point? How many employees do you have, by the way?
Oh, in the main office, we'll have anywhere from 4 to 7 people here at any given time. Now out in the field, we'll have anywhere from 10 to 30 people.
Yeah.
But in the main office, about 7.
That's
And
still
so,
incredibly small for the
hang on.
operation
Let
you
me
guys
say
do.
that 9. My boy started.
Oh,
My son started. So
aw.
9 now. Let me correct that.
You're training up the third generation.
Fourth. Yeah, we've
Oh,
reached
yeah,
the
fourth.
fourth generation. Yep.
Incredible.
No, it's well, it's one of those, you fight your parents forever trying to prove them wrong. And then all of a sudden you look back 30 years later and you realize how much truth they were giving you.
Oh, yeah.
And so I find myself all the time now saying my dad taught me a long time ago, but he did. And one of the things my dad taught me a long time ago is that without my partners, I don't have a business,
Yeah.
period. And so the foundational principle of everything we do is one question: is it good for the partners? And if it's not, we don't do it. Doesn't matter what it would be for us, because without our partners, we don't have a business. And that's something we'll never violate. And so as long as we have that at the first and at the forefront of everything we do, then win, lose, or draw, whatever the chips may be, we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
And we're not going to back up from anybody, because we do what we say we're going to do.
Yeah. I love your company, and you brought up the Wild Wild West. Your company reminds me of the way that companies and organizations used to operate. And I think that is a really, really good thing that the American people are thirsting for. So this was an absolute honor highlighting you on.
No,
I didn't
thank you,
expect
Amanda.
to have a oil and gas conversation, because frankly, I don't know that much about it, but I thought that you explaining it was absolutely fascinating, and I think that my audience will really enjoy it too. So.
Well, I hope they do, Amanda. It's been a pleasure.
And tell everybody where they can find out more about your organization.
Panex.us/learn, or heck, email me, rjburr@panex.us.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Jay. This has been an absolute honor. We'll have you back on again soon.
Have a good one.
All right, everybody. We're going to take a very quick commercial break, but we will be back after these messages. All right, everybody, welcome back to this Small Business Saturday episode of Furthermore with Amanda Head. I am so excited that you all have joined me. If you have just stumbled upon this podcast, I encourage you to check out the audio only version, which is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's called Furthermore with Amanda Head, and this is our Saturday series, which is video. And at some point, we might expand the entire podcast to be a video podcast and not audio only. But you know what? I am just trying to pick up my foot and place my foot in front of me and take every step, small step that I can moving in that direction. So thank you all so much for being here. And again, that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday on all of the podcasting platforms. Furthermore with Amanda Head. I want to wrap up the week with a little bit of news. And for those of you who either listen to the weekly podcast or the Monday, Wednesday, Friday podcast weekly, or you watch the TV show that I co-host with John Solomon Monday through Friday on Real America's Voice, then you are probably, and if you're just a consumer of news in general, then you probably already know about these two stories that I want to highlight. And look, every night of the week when I am on air with John Solomon, it is an absolute honor, because, man, that guy is such a freaking patriot. He does such a service to this country every time he puts out a story. And I have become quite protective of him, especially with respect to snarky comments online and snarky comments from people who text me out of the blue. This happened a few weeks ago. I had a woman from Georgia who texted me criticizing the TV show for having a certain guest on. And I didn't respond, because I think it's important to exercise measure and to take the high road. But anyway, I am constantly on top of the news cycle, as I know all of you are. So anyway, on the nightly TV show, John broke two major stories this week that one of them directly involves Hunter Biden and one of them involves Hunter and also his father and then also President Barack Obama. Now, the first story is pertaining to Hunter Biden. As many of you know about his relationship with Burisma, the natural gas company out of Ukraine. And you probably will recognize a lot of the names involved in this story. And I've got to have my notes here because there are a lot of moving parts. So we now know about these two stories that I'm going to talk about not because of the FBI, who has known about this since 2015, who's known about these stories and these scandals since 2015. We know about this because of over 3 million documents that were turned over to the House Oversight Committee, to the chairman, James Comer, by Devon Archer, who is one of Hunter Biden's former very, very close friends, business associates, partners in many different entities. So Devon Archer has come remarkably clean on a lot of this. So these documents that were turned over pertain to documents that the FBI has had as a result of a tribal bond fraud investigation into Devon Archer. Devon Archer is currently in prison serving a sentence pertaining to this investigation. So these documents pertain to a company called Burnham Energy Security, LLC, that ultimately would have been financed via $120 million capital from Mykola Zlochevsky, who, again, if you watch the TV show or you pay attention to John's reporting on this, you know that name from Burisma. So now Mykola Zlochevsky is ready to put up about $120 million worth of capital for another Hunter Biden connected company. Now, because of a few different circumstances, one of which was an investigation by his own country into his business dealings and the future forfeiture of a number of his assets, including boats and things like that. I think a Rolls Royce was thrown in there too. Anyway, this ultimately did not pan out, but you think about a $120 million business opportunity that, again, Hunter Biden was connected to. And if you want to say that, you know, it had nothing to do with his father, just remember that Hunter Biden had no experience or knowledge whatsoever in the energy sector. And according to Vadim Pajarsky, who was right under Mykola Zlochevsky, Vadim Pajarsky, in an email from August of 2015, urged the involvement of Hunter Biden, said basically, my boss, Zlochevsky, really wants Hunter Biden involved. And we know that Hunter Biden was selling his involvement in these businesses based off of who his father was. And this is 2015. So of course, Joe Biden was still in office. So this is just yet another instance of Hunter Biden using his last name, using his father's position as vice president. And there is no possible way that Joe Biden didn't know what was going on. And we know this because, you know, it all started when we saw pictures of Joe Biden with Hunter, and I think it was Devon Archer and maybe Tony Bobulinski in the picture. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, the infamous golf picture where they're all in this picture together. So that's when people started asking questions about whether Joe Biden actually knew anything and to what extent he was knowledgeable of his son's business dealings. And then it all just kind of unraveled from there because we sent some documents that were FOIA'd from NARA and testimony by Jason Galanis and Devon Archer and Tony Bobulinski, and the list just goes on and on and on. All right, so this next story is kind of peripheral to it, but this is another one that came from the documents that John acquired that was a result of these, I think it was 3.39 million documents that Devon Archer released, emails, financial, banking documents, things like that. And I'm going to actually read a piece of this transcript. So it involves a top government official who actually still serves Joe Biden in this administration as well. But under Obama, he was the State Department's energy guy, and his name is Amos Hochstein. So in the Obama years, when he served in the State Department as their expert, the summer of 2014, right after Hunter Biden was appointed to the board of Burisma, Hochstein ended up taking a meeting with Burisma officials, and that is contained within these documents. So the reason that this is newsworthy is because at the time that these meetings took place between Amos Hochstein, the energy expert working within the State Department of the Obama administration, he was the Burisma Holdings was dealing with some pretty turbulent news. Mykola Zlochevsky, again, the guy I was just talking about, was told that his assets were about to be frozen by British Serious Fraud Office at the request of, I think our FBI was actually at least peripherally involved, but U.S. authorities. So within a few weeks of that action that was taken by our ally, the UK, Hunter Biden and his associates arranged for Burisma's top executive, again, Vadim Pojarsky, in this meeting with Amos Hochstein. So to kind of put this in lay terms or lay circumstances, you've got one of our strongest allies, the UK, who has deemed this guy corrupt, who are about to possibly seize assets. They've been investigating him. They've been looking into him for a while. You would think that that would be good enough for the Obama administration to say, maybe even just optics wise, we shouldn't engage in this. We shouldn't be meeting with them. But Amos Hochstein, again, energy expert for the State Department, decides to go and meet with this guy. So again, we find that Joe Biden, and to some degree, heck, I don't even know, I don't know what Barack Obama knew about what Joe Biden was doing and what his son Hunter Biden was doing, but I have to imagine that the reports about Barack Obama and Joe Biden, having a very tensioned relationship possibly spawned from the fact that Barack Obama knew what Hunter was doing at this time and Joe was still letting it happen. And again, John and I have talked about this on the TV show before, that I don't think that there is any universe that exists where Joe Biden wasn't getting defensive briefings about what his son was doing and was told to tell his son to knock it off. I don't think that universe exists. And if Barack Obama knew about it, I have to think that Barack Obama would certainly be in a position of influence with Joe Biden to say, please stop this. You're going to take down my entire presidency. You're going to take down my legacy, because we know how much Barack Obama cares about his legacy. Good grief. It's like all that matters to him. But again, we have instances where, proven corruption for Joe Biden. And yet he still polls well. I don't know how. I really don't know how. But all I know is until there is a change of the guard at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we're going to continue uncovering stories like this until kingdom come, because John Solomon is indefatigable, and he is going, boy, when he's like a dog with a bone. If he knows that it's buried out there somewhere, he's going to find it, and nothing will stop him from doing it. So, all right, everybody, I hope you are having a great weekend so far, and I'll be back on Monday with the audio only podcast, Furthermore with Amanda Head, on iTunes, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, on justthenews.com/podcast, anywhere that you listen to your podcast. Hope you all have a blessed rest of your weekend. Be safe. See you on Monday.